So, this video is the video. Everything you need to know and prepare yourself for if you want to enter the plasma zone. Dude, no one has ever created a plasma video on YouTube. Beep, 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 beep. The last ShopSabre video we did, you guys seemed to like a lot. Since then, it's been almost a year and a half now of ownership and near constant use and learning and practice and adjusting and maintenance. Cut to pre-roll ad.
Let me start by saying this video is in no way sponsored by ShopSabre.
Ladies and gentlemen, this video is sponsored by ShopSabre. Why? Because I reached out to them. ShopSabre is a very easy company to advocate for because they make a hell of a product and multiple products that honestly have fabricators in mind. They have some of the best customer service. Everything's American made. The machines are incredibly versatile, modifiable, you can change them around, and they're incredibly durable. Even the entry-level stuff is built like a tank. It's made in America. Look how well made it is. Award-winning customer support. Incredibly versatile. It's so easy to use. It's so fast. Wow. In all seriousness, if you're looking to add any kind of CNC capability to your shop, home garage, professional business, anything from beginner to professional level, give ShopSabre some of your attention because, like me, I poured everything I have into starting my own business, and ShopSabre hit that sweet spot between having all the features that I need now and will need in the future, and being affordable for someone who is, basically starting a small business on their own. So they've been there for me. I believe they'll be there for you because they're a great company and great people. So consider ShopSabre for your next CNC need. So why CNC plasma cutting? Or why CNC in general? CNC is computer numeric control, and that can apply to any sort of machine controlled by a computer. In this video, I'm talking specifically about a CNC plasma cutter. What does it do? A CNC plasma cutter cuts whatever you design out of a two-dimensional piece of metal, any sort of conductive material. And technically everything is three-dimensional, but you get what I'm saying. There's no vertical component really to this. It cuts 2D parts out of 2D pieces of metal. I'm a custom metal fabricator and a welder. And what I do is build custom things out of metal for everyone, from awnings to benches to custom metal signs to welding and repairing industrial equipment, repairing broken anything metal. And the reason I got a CNC plasma machine is not to base my entire business structure around it, but to allow it to elevate my capabilities that much more. With this machine, I can be in the middle of a project and think, oh, I need 5 gussets, 10 gussets, 5 flanges, a part cut to fit specifically into an existing hole or area. With this machine, I can literally go from concept to drawing to metal part inside of 5 to 10 minutes. When you're a prototype shop like me, meaning I don't typically do more than one of the same thing, I do very different projects all the time. Being able to fast track prototype or rapid prototype with a machine like this is incredible. It's a huge time saver. It's super accurate. So this machine elevates my business. Now, you can very easily base your entire business around a machine like this. If you've got a garage and you want to start making custom metal signs or custom parts, metal signage, let's face it, is where the quote unquote easy money is with one of these. You can do that. CNC plasma cutting is just a portion of my business. So I'm coming at it from that viewpoint. There's a million videos out there about CNC plasma cutters and how they quote unquote print money. As far as this being a money printer, I'm gonna kind of call BS on that. Yes, it pays for itself quite easily, and you can make a lot of money with a CNC plasma cutter. But there's a lot that goes into printing money with a CNC plasma cutter. Sourcing material, buying material, transporting material, loading material, designing parts, uploading parts, calibrating the machine, adjusting the machine, maintaining the machine, cutting the part, cleaning the part, finishing the part, assembling the part, fabricating the part, welding the part, whatever you need to do. It's not a money printer That's a gross oversimplification. And it also depends on where your standards of quality are, okay? I mean, if someone literally asked you, cut 100 parts out of a sheet, I don't care what they look like, don't clean them up, just throw them in a box and ship them to me, great. And that's about as close as you're gonna get to printing money with a CNC plasma cutter. But really, it's a capability amplifier for a custom fabrication shop. How did I choose ShopSabre? And how did I choose the 5x10, or the Sidekick 10, as it's called? How did I choose what plasma power unit to go with? How did I choose what mount to use? I guessed and did a little bit of research. I would guess that the basic rule of thumb is buy the machine that you can afford. Now, I financed this machine through my bank because I couldn't afford $26,000. I financed this machine and I pay $400 a month for the loan. That's not bad. If you can't make $400 a month with a machine like this, then you have no business running a custom metal shop. I'm sorry, but that's just very easy to cover the costs of something like this, in my opinion. And that's all this video is, my opinion. I went with this machine because it was one of the most affordable models I could find that did everything that I wanted to do. And okay, to address the people in the comment section from the last video that were like, oh, I can build a machine better than that for $3 grand. No, you can't. I mean, just the steel alone involved in this whole structure is gonna be close to $2 or $3 grand. This is a 12x4 piece of rectangular tubing. Good luck finding that for cheap. There are a ton of DIY plasma table kits out there. And yes, if you educate yourself on coding and CNC programming, if you learn how to build things, weld things, you know, it's very possible. And yes, you can do the type of stuff that I do for less than what I paid for this machine. But I'm very busy. I am a one-man shop keeping up with 5-6 jobs at any given time. And that's how I make money. So I wanted my downtime to be as little as possible. I wanted to unload this machine from the trailer with my forklift, place it, level it, hook up the air, hook up the power to the plasma cutter, hook up the computer, and go. That's why I went with what I went with. I didn't even realize how good ShopSabre's customer support was until I bought the machine. I mean, I kind of just dove in. If you've built your own CNC machine with a DIY kit or whatever, you pieced it together, you are your customer support team. And if you trust yourself to be able to diagnose and troubleshoot something that you built in your garage, great. I love building stuff. I build custom cars, I build custom computers. I get it, I love it. I don't have time for it anymore. If you have time for it, I'm not trying to be the guy that says like, don't take on a project, don't have fun, don't build your own CNC machine. Do it. I'm sure it's incredibly rewarding when you get it all right. But just know the pitfalls involved with building your own, CNC machine. I'm not gonna waste your time trying to explain what a plasma cutter is. I think I've already done that in a past video. Plasma cutters work by using high voltage to split the atoms in the air, creating the fourth state of matter, which is plasma, and then they use a jet of compressed air to shoot that plasma through the metal, melting it like a lightsaber. It's kind of awesome. The key difference here is plasma cutters can exist as a handheld solution, meaning this one has a drag tip, so you can literally just put it on your material, pull the trigger, and slice through anything, in my case, up to 1 inch thick. This is the machine-mounted version. These accomplish the same thing, except this one is triggered remotely, moved remotely, positioned remotely. You get the idea. Just having a plasma cutter in general with a hand torch is a huge level up for a custom fabrication shop. It really is. I mean, just comparing something like this to a cutoff wheel is a night and day upgrade. One pass, one cut, and if you use a stop or a straight edge to rest your torch on to cut, much like you would with an oxyacetylene torch, your cuts are super straight, and if you dial in your settings, you don't have a whole lot of cleanup afterwards. You cut something with a cutoff wheel, you still have to get rid of the flashing off the back of the cut. There's a little bit of dross with plasma cutting, but it's not that bad once you dial in your settings. You can really cut down on dross when you have a machine-operated torch. One other point is, if you're not able to buy the CNC table and the plasma cutter at the same time, I honestly recommend buying the plasma cutter, and by that I mean buy this first if you can't afford the whole system. Just adding this to your tool collection in your metal shop is a huge upgrade. And the good news is that if you buy one that will integrate with a CNC plasma system, Like this one is meant to have a control lead wired into the back of it. Then at that point down the road, when you're ready to upgrade, you can buy the CNC table and connect it with your existing plasma cutter. So you can do this whole thing in stages and still get a really good system. This is the computer that controls the actual machine. It runs Windows. The only difference, if you're intimidated by computers, don't mind this. This whole system was part of the package that I bought from ShopSabre. This right here, this card, is the only thing that makes this computer special for CNC plasma cutting. This add-on card allows the computer to interface with the CNC controller over here. Do you know what any of this is? I have no idea what any of this stuff is. This is the kind of stuff you need to teach yourself if you want to build a CNC plasma table yourself. These two data cables here go to the back of the computer and interface with that card, with this. They go in here. Also, I found this cabinet from a friend in town. It's made for stuff like this. It's super awesome. I think ShopSabre sells a computer stand. You could build your own computer stand. Some systems do come with computer stands. Just go on like Marketplace, eBay, find one of these, super great. So the computer that they send with the machine is a full-fledged computer. Let's do this. Let's see what this system has. So I was sent a Windows-based computer running a Intel G5400, which is probably an i5, 8 gigs of RAM, 64-bit operating system. Processor is a G series, so it has its built-in graphics processor. It's not a powerhouse by any means. You could probably do basic part design in this computer. So if you don't currently have a computer that is worth, its own weight, you could probably do a decent amount of part designing right here at the machine. I haven't tried it. I can't speak to that effect, but there's nothing about this machine that would tell me that you can't do it. It's running a full-fat Windows 10 operating system. And if you're not designing your own parts and you're downloading them from like an online library or something, it's a full computer. So that's pretty cool. And because it's a PC, it's upgradable. So if you wanted to add a graphics card, change out the CPU, beef it up a little bit to be your full-on, 3D modeling workstation, you could do that.
Or gaming.
Or gaming, but can it play Crysis? No. So I have this computer on my network as well as my actual design workstation in there. And I have a shared folder established on the desktop of this computer that's shared on my network. So when I design a part on my computer in there, I export it to the network folder that lives on the desktop of this computer. I mean, ShopSabre does send over these cute little pen drives to transfer your files around. It's a pain in the ass. So the network folder is a great help. And I was using a trial piece of software that allowed me to control the machine with my Xbox controller. I mean, it came with everything. The screen, the keyboard, the mouse. I had to buy my own mouse pad, but I'll take it. So that's what my system came with. We made a whole video on what it was like to receive this machine, unload it, install it, and kind of hook it up. But here's the deal. What does it take to sustain, to feed, to power a CNC plasma table? You need a few things. You need a high volume compressed air supply, the right power for your plasma cutter. You need a 110 power source for the table itself. You need a 110 power source for the computer, so that's 2 outlets. And you need to plumb your air compressor or air system to your plasma cutter. So let me show you my air system. And it is very rudimentary. And I can do some pretty impressive stuff with my table. So don't give in to, you gotta buy a professional air dryer, which I've found used and I'm gonna install this, but that just came into my life. This is the air supply for my entire shop. This is an 80-gallon Ingersoll Rand 2-stage air compressor. This is the kind of thing you can buy at like Tractor Supply or Northern Tool. The key here is the volume. It's nice to have a really high capacity compressor because this tank can get drained pretty fast if that thing's running constantly. But most 40 to 80 and up gallon compressors are gonna be plenty capable of feeding your plasma cutter with compressed air. Now, the more important thing about your air supply is that the air is dry. I have the most basic solution for that. This is a 3-stage water separator, oil separator, and desiccant air dryer. Bought this on eBay for like $250, and it does okay. In fact, I've been running my machine with this system for, well, a year or so. The only thing I don't like about this is that in this last canister, there are these things. Blue indicating silica gel, 1 gallon. So this stuff is hyper moisture absorbent. This is basically the kind of stuff that, like, you know those little packets that come in like a shoebox that says don't eat this? That's what it is. This stuff just like pulls all the moisture out of the air. So in this last canister is filled with this stuff. The air goes down and it rises up through a hopper of these things. They pull the moisture out of the air, and leaving this 3-stage system is very dry air. Now, I set up all the air lines in my shop myself, and I did it with PEX pipe. Ooh, don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. It works fine. PEX is, this is PEX. PEX is plastic plumbing pipe. It's typically used for a home water system. Blue for cold usually, and you'll see red PEX for hot, but you plumb it however the hell you want. This stuff is technically rated for like 160 PSI and 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Most compressors, shop tools, operate at like 90 to 120 PSI. I know, I'm very close to the rated capacity of PEX line. But to fix that, you use the regulator that comes on your air dryer. That's what this is. This dial would indicate what pressure the rest of the system is seeing. You can also regulate with the pressure switch to determine where your compressor shuts off, like the max pressure. So there's 2 regulation systems in here to keep the pressure from going too high to blow this PEX pipe up. Why did I go with PEX pipe for my entire air infrastructure? It's cheap and it's easy to put together. You use brass fittings and crimp rings, and you can build your entire air system in the course of, in my case, 4 hours. Out of the compressor, through the air dryer, up the wall, over the wall. I don't know why I put valves up in the ceiling. I should have put them lower so I can reach, but I built that manifold myself, if that wasn't already obvious by looking at it. I have air reels in the ceiling for air tools, and then one of those obviously splits off, makes its way over there. That air line comes here, and I have a hose reel here because sometimes on this wall, this is the only air supply. So sometimes I'll disconnect the air from my plasma cutter and run a air squirter for my lathe and mill or whatever else. I realize now more than ever where the pitfalls in my air system are. The dryer isn't the best. There's far too much air line here. There's even a redundant water separator on the back of the machine. What I plan to do, and in my mind, the best case scenario would be to run a refrigerated air dryer. You can buy one at Harbor Freight for $500-600, I think. I called a local air compressor manufacturer supplier. I could get an industrial one that's meant to run 24/7 and better quality than the one from Harbor Freight, for $1,000. Now, to guarantee a constant, perfectly bone dry air supply for $600 to $1,000, killer investment. So you would run air compressor into the refrigerated air dryer and then run that to probably a manifold if you're supplying air around your shop. One of the hoses off of that manifold will go directly and be permanently plumbed to the plasma cutter. You could even have that cheap little 3-stage thing that I have now on the wall next to this. So you have another layer of assurance that your air is super dry. Why does dry air matter, you might say? You need to take this with a grain of salt because it is March of 2022. Hypertherm has redesigned their whole consumable line for their plasma cutters. So your mileage may vary. The best I can come up with is twofold. One, these electrodes have this mechanical component to them. This thing is meant to be pushed down, I believe, by the air pressure, and moisture in the air supply will eventually make this stick, which will throw a trouble code on the plasma cutter, and your machine will stop cutting. It's not a big deal. You can reset the machine, resume where you left off in the software, and the machine will continue to cut as long as the issue doesn't happen again. The main problem with water in the air supply is if you have torch height control. This machine and the accompanying software and computer can actively in real time tell how far this torch is off the surface of the metal that you're cutting. You'll see it as THC, usually torch height control. not weed. I've been told, and I've proven it by going from wet air to dry air and seeing an improvement. Wet air really messes with the torch height control system, because I think what it's doing is in some way it is measuring the resistance of the arc or the voltage of the arc, and there's a reading that will change the further away the cutting torch is from the metal. And as it's been explained to me, moisture in the air supply will basically give the torch height control system a false reading. And so wet air can cause the torch to dive into your material or cut too high. In my case, it was diving into the material. And before I had my collision detection head, I had the magnetic, I had this thing, you know, which stuck onto here and the torch, and it would just keep cutting. In fact, I think I alluded to this briefly in the video where we made our custom 5x10 fabrication table. I was having to babysit this thing constantly and not take my eyes off of it because it would dive, the torch would move, all the subsequent cuts would be off. So it's very important to have dry air in your air supply. Do your best, buy the equipment that you can afford. You know, when the machine is this expensive, it's very easy to cut corners elsewhere. You know, you're like, oh, I already spent 20 grand. I'm gonna cheap out on my compressor, I'm gonna cheap out on my dryer, and I'm not gonna be the dickhead online that's gonna tell you like, don't do that. Get the system you can get, and then upgrade as you can. I have limped some cheap air compressors years and years and years past when they should have lasted by changing the oil in the compressor, making sure the tank is dry or emptied, drained constantly, and yeah. But I mean, it's inside. You know, if your air compressor's out in the elements, good luck. So that's air. Let me finish infrastructure and setup by saying, I'm not gonna say no assembly required, but as far as the machine is concerned, I mean, there really wasn't any assembly required. Wiring everything up, the infrastructure part is where the work is. You know, you need to feed the machine what it needs. But again, the advantage of buying a system that's been thought and designed completely by a company that is reputable is that you place it, level it, wire it up, and go. Worth it. Yeah, it was pouring rain when this machine showed up, and it was wrapped. It was shrink wrapped to protect it from the elements. It's worth it.
That's infrastructure.
Questions from viewers of the last video. What's the biggest negative feature to the ShopSabre? I don't even know that they offer the machine with this magnetic torch mount, but this was by far the biggest negative feature. In fact, by many accounts, the only negative feature of this machine, considering what I paid for it. This magnetic torch mount used to sit right here, and in this hole sat this torch, and it was magnetically attached to the face of this. It has a level in it. Before every cut, you would have to move the torch around, get this level, and push it down and make sure, and just hope that it didn't hit anything and move. When it comes to a precision piece of equipment like this, I mean, you buy a CNC machine for repeatability, precision, accuracy, that kind of thing. Again, they may not offer it anymore. They may try to upsell you from this to the collision detection system. Do it, because the money you spend on the collision detection upgrade, you would spend down the road as far as labor is concerned wrestling with this magnetic torch mount. So that's my least favorite part about the ShopSabre system, which may not even be an issue anymore. It even looks like a face that's unhappy. I'm really looking into buying a table myself. Is it possible to create complicated designs to cut out, such as an NFL team logo? Houston Texans. That's from Blaine Maestas. Absolutely. Custom, intricate metal signage has become a big part of my business thanks to this machine. And here's some examples. There are certain intricacies involved when it comes to cutting out logos. We're gonna do a deeper dive on programming and design. Hi, I'm on the fence on buying a 63 amp or 120 amp plasma source. I am a beginner. Does the operation cost between the two is too much? By any chance, do you have an estimated? Love your channel, Marcelo. Well, I'm curious, because I've never heard of a 63 amp plasma system. There's a PowerMax 60 probably. I think what they're asking is how powerful of a plasma cutter do you need to buy for your table? That simply comes down to the thickness of metal that you plan on working with. With the PowerMax 85, I can cut up to like 1.25 inches thick metal, which is way thicker than anything I've done And I probably wouldn't spring for the PowerMax 85. I'd probably go with the 65 if I did it again and save a few $1,000s. Just this PowerMax 85 alone was a $4,000 or $5,000 cost to the whole package. I knew what I wanted to do with my business, and I knew that I wanted to push it and grow it and be able to say yes to all sorts of complicated builds. So I went bigger than I probably would have otherwise. I think this kind of comes back to buy the equipment that you can afford to buy. I could do 90, maybe 80% of the stuff that I use this machine for with a plasma cutter half the size as the one I have. So that's really something where a 45, like if it's a hypertherm machine, a 45 or 65 is probably the ceiling. The 85 and the 105 or anything higher than that is probably going to be reserved for a specifically industrial application. For a beginner, I would say a 60, 65 amp machine is plenty of power. In fact, a 45 amp machine, if you're going with a hypertherm again, is gonna do all that you want it to do. Because I think you can cut up to like 3/8 with a 45 amp machine, so that's plenty. I mean, so electrical cost, you know, your power bill has something to do with what type of plasma power system you go with. But it's pretty minimal because if you're a beginner or just starting out or even an intermediate shop like me, the power, like the HVAC system in my office has a much bigger impact on my power bill than this machine does. Unless you're running your machine constantly all day long, your power bill is going to be the least of your concerns. Well, this is actually a complicated answer because while the power of the size of your plasma cutter can affect how much power usage it has, if you have an 85 and you're running it at 45 amps, it's the same as running a 45 amp machine. And I'm running on a 3-phase, 220 volt power supply, which is more efficient than a single phase power supply. So a lot of variables, do what you can do. So anyway, that was a little bit of Q&A. If you have any more questions, definitely drop them in the comment section below.
So in our quest to bring you the most comprehensive plasma video content ever, coming up next is all about how to design and cut parts, how to deal with the machine, what to do with the parts when they come off, how to use plasma cut parts in fabrication projects, all sorts of stuff. We're gonna show you how to do this. Ooh. I swear it cuts better on thick material. Stay tuned for some of that.